Well, today's thought for the day is for Thursday, the 23rd of April. See if you know who said these things, which people said these things. See if you know who said, "I have nothing to offer." And see if you know who said, "I have a dream." And see if you know who said, "Veni, vidi, vici." We'll come to the answers at the end of this thought for the day. But today's psalm is Psalm 45. And it's titled, in the New International Version, "For the Director of Music to the tune Lilies of the Sons of Korah, a Maskil, a wedding song." And that's what Psalm 45 is. It is a wedding song. It begins with verse 1, "My heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses for the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer." But then the skillful writer goes on, and in verses 2 to 9, the verses are in praise of the king. In verses 10 to 15, these verses are in praise of the queen, before ending with a promise in verse 16 and a wonderful statement in verse 17 that the king will be remembered forever. So looking at the psalm, verses 2 to 9 are not just verses for the king, they are verses about the king. In verse 2, "You are the most excellent of men, and your lips have been anointed with grace, since God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword upon your side, O mighty one. Clothe yourself with splendor and majesty. In your majesty ride forth victoriously on behalf of truth, humility, and righteousness. Let your right hand display awesome deeds. Let your sharp arrows pierce the hearts of the king's enemies. Let the nations fall beneath your feet." The picture here is a picture of Suzanne and I on our wedding day in the summer of 1991. We didn't have Psalm 45 at our wedding. Perhaps we should have. But it's unclear in Psalm 45 which king the psalm was specifically written for. Quite probably it was written with one royal couple in mind and afterwards was sung at many a royal wedding in the kingdom of Judah. But as a song, it's a wonderful prophecy about Jesus, the most excellent of men. It's a wonderful prophecy of who and what he is. Psalm 45 is an amazing psalm. Speaking of the king, the words are blasphemous if spoken of just a man. In verse 6, "Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be the scepter of your kingdom." And then in verse 7, "You love righteousness and hate wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has set you above your companions by anointing you with the oil of joy." These are amazing words to find in the Old Testament because the king being sung to and sung about is described in verse 6 as God, yet in verse 7 as anointed by and distinct from God. It's an amazing psalm to say, "Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. Therefore God, your God, has set you above your companions." In Hebrews 1 verses 6 to 9, the writer identifies this passage with Jesus. And so as such, we can make verse 4 especially our prayer to Jesus today. "In your majesty, Jesus, ride forth victoriously on behalf of truth, humility, and righteousness. Let your right hand display awesome deeds." O Lord, especially in these days, awesome deeds of healing, comfort, and compassion, because your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. But the psalm is not just in praise of the king. Verses 10 to 15 are in praise of the queen too. Listen, O daughter, consider and give ear. Forget your people in your father's house. The king is enthralled by your beauty. Honour him, for he is your Lord. It goes on in verse 13. All glorious is the princess within her chamber. Her gown is interwoven with gold. In embroidered garments she is led to the king. Her virgin companions follow her and are brought to you. They are led in with joy and gladness. They enter the palace of the king. If the king is a prophecy of Jesus, then verses 10 to 15 is a statement too about you and about me, about us, the daughter, the bride. Pictured in Psalm 45 is the New Jerusalem, the church. And in verse 11, the king is enthralled by your beauty. This is what I'm showing for those who are listening on the phone line. This is a picture. It's our wedding picture, Suzanne's and mine's, the summer of 1991. And two things stand out in the picture. I have hair and Suzanne hasn't changed. In verse 11 we read, the king is enthralled by your beauty. It's a wonderful prophecy about Jesus, but also about us. The king is enthralled by your beauty. You are beautiful in his eyes. You were then, when he first chose you, and you first chose him, when you gave your life to him, and you are now. You are still beautiful in his eyes. The king is enthralled by your beauty, but it also goes on, honour him, for he is your Lord. In verse 10 of Psalm 45, honouring the king as her Lord will for the princess, the bride, mean leaving her people and her father's house. And for us, following Jesus, loving him as Lord, means leaving other things behind and foregoing other lords. What am I? What are you being called to let go, lay down, or turn from today in order to honour, to be with, to follow Jesus? The king is enthralled by your beauty. Honour him. He is your Lord. But after beginning with a personal note in verse 1, my heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses for the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. The psalm ends with another personal statement in verse 17. I will perpetuate your memory through all generations. Therefore the nations will praise you forever and ever. At the start, I asked if you knew who said those words. What was the first word? Who said, I have nothing to offer? Well, that was Winston Churchill. I have nothing to offer but, what was it? Blood, sweat, toils, and tears. It's not easy. It's not easy being a Christian. But also, who said, I have a dream? Well, that was Martin Luther King Jr. He had a dream, a day when race wouldn't matter anymore. The colour of a person's skin wouldn't matter. And who said Veni, Vidi, Vici? Well, that was Julius Caesar. I came, I saw, I conquered. Well, reputedly, that's what Julius Caesar said after the invasion of Britain. I came, I saw, I conquered. Marriage is a partnership. And in Psalm 45, we have a wonderful, wonderful love story. A king and his bride. The words we speak can long outlast the lives of those who spoke them. Psalm 45 has lasted written over 2,500 years ago. It's still being read today. I wonder what words, lines, or verses you might wish to come out of your mouth that will perpetuate the memory of Jesus. My heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses for the King. What would you like to say about Jesus, your King, today?